Well, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alan Kearns. I want to welcome you all to our conversation today and part of our CareerClass series. And hope you're enjoying this wherever you are today. I know it's summer in Canada, and certainly where I'm based out of Ottawa, it's very much summer. So, so hope you wherever you are, it's either near water or near shade or in breeze or air conditioning. So I want to welcome you all as part of our conversation today as far as our CareerClass series on helping professionals to manage their career more effectively and get better outcomes. So I want to welcome you as part of this. A couple quick technical things for those that are relatively new to webinars. You can join us a couple different ways. One is you'll notice that you have a hands up sign. So if you want to give me a hands up sign, just to make sure that you can hear me fine and see the screen. So just give me a hands up just to make sure that there's no issue that way. Terrific. Okay, great. Also, you'll notice that there is a question box down below, and you can use that as well to enter into the conversation today about comments you may have about our webinar or about as we come along today. So feel free just to take a minute now to introduce yourself in that box and where you're joining us from, as well as my name is Alan Kearns, and I'm the founder and head coach of CareerJoy, and I'm going to be leading our discussion today about this whole concept of identifying the right career path, or as I've subtitled this, what I should do now that I'm all grown up. And a couple of different other things too. As far as joining the conversation today, you'll notice that you can tweet if you follow Twitter or involved with Twitter as well. You can tweet #CareerJoy and #CareerClass, as well as you can connect with me on LinkedIn. There's other ways to connect with me. I don't know how many of you are connected on LinkedIn. Put up your hands, those of you that are on LinkedIn, that are involved in LinkedIn. Okay, a number of you are involved. That's good. So if you're not connected to me, I will show you how to do that by clicking this link I'm going to send you, as well as you'll need my email address. So I'll send that to you a little bit later, that you'll have that, so that you'll know how to connect with me directly through LinkedIn. One of the concepts of not only knowing the right career, but actually managing a career is connections. And I always say your network is your net worth today. So, and we have a large and diverse group of people that I'm connected with, so that could be helpful for you. So I'll send that to you, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Great. A little bit about my background. I'm the founder and head coach of CareerJoy, and we're a national career and leadership coaching company. We're about 10 years old. We have 10 offices across the country, from Halifax to Vancouver. So we have Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa. We have Kingston, Montreal, Halifax, and 3 offices in Toronto. So Toronto downtown, Toronto Central, and Toronto, Mississauga. So I started the company because I ran a recruiting firm before this, and I found many professionals we were dealing with were struggling with the what's next, or where to go, and what options were out there, and we're struggling with what to do with that question, and we're unsure what to do with that. And often we're coming to recruiters like myself and our team, asking us career management questions or getting our advice on things, but quite frankly, we didn't have the time to spend really to help clients really think through their journey. And we're also in Vancouver too. I think I forgot to mention we're in Vancouver. But many clients were coming to us asking for a perspective on what's next, where to go, what their options were. But really, recruiters are working on behalf of organizations, not on behalf of candidates. And so I felt that there was a need in the market for professionals, for particularly the well-educated professional who was going for it in their career on how to go about managing a career. So that's really where CareerJoy started. And we have a number of coaches that work on our team, and most of them are masters or PhDs, and they all have really good experience and really bring what I call practical perspective. And we also have a number of partnerships. A number of universities in the country, such as these, refer us their alumni, recognizing that they trust us with that. So not necessarily their students, but their alumni. So we're typically working with many of the well-educated professionals, as well as we also have a corporate practice. So we also work on the corporate side. So I bring to this conversation really 2 sides of this. One, what's going on from the corporate perspective, what are they seeing that's going on? and their needs, but also from an individual's perspective, what's happening. So you're obviously asking the question, what is the right career? What are the right options? What is out there? Ironically, I'm actually educated as an optician, so my whole career and my education is actually about helping professionals to see things more clearly and more accurately. So I'm hoping today, after a little bit of a better, worse, that you'll come out of this better and with more clarity and a perspective. Now, why is this important? Why is getting the right career important? What's sort of the reasons why this is important? And I see this playing out in the work that we do. Number one, this is a great slide of research around regret. Now, it is an American study, but it's, I found that this has been fairly consistent within Canada as well. The number one reason that we often see people looking at sources of regrets in their life, number one is romance and family. So that's sort of the first and second reason where people are often looking back saying, I wish I would have done this differently. It's often related to relationships. And the third and fourth category that people often show regrets in is their choice of education and career. Now, how many of you, put up your hands, knowing what you know about yourself now, may have chosen a different educational path or a different career path, knowing what you know about yourself now? How many of you would feel that way? So about 40% of you feel that way. And it's interesting because you look at the next category, the fourth, fifth, and sixth category is financing and parenting, and the seventh is health. And what I've discovered is career is sort of one of the key focal points of most people's lives. When people have their career together, it impacts their relationships, it impacts their health, it impacts them as parenting. And I've seen many examples where clients come to us and I'll say, why are you doing this now? And they'll say, well, I'm really finding I'm not a very happy partner, and that's impacting my relationship. Or I'm coming home and I'm really short with my kids. Or you know what, I'm not really reaching my economic potential. And a lot of that gets centered around the right career. So this is, to me, number one, why the right career is so important, because when you're in the right career and you're in the right circumstances, it impacts so many other dimensions of your life. It's really an anchor point, a foundation of our life, one of the key things. The other reason it's important very practically is what I call reset, economic reset. We keep hearing recession, and been hearing that for now, I don't know how many years. And I really think what we're going through is an economic recession. And there's a fundamental reset in the economy. So the second reason I think this is really important is because if you're not in the right career, you've never been more vulnerable. People that are in the top 20 percentile of what they do have never had more opportunity. And those that are in the bottom 80% have never been more vulnerable. Let me say that again. Those that are in the top 20% of what they do have never had more opportunity, and those that are in the bottom 80% have never been more vulnerable. And this is because of these reasons around reset. What are some of the resets? Well, first of all, just the economic platform we live in, that markets are going up and down, and there's a lot of turbulence. Same with public sector. You might say, well, gee, I hear many clients say, well, I want to get a public sector job. And I'll say, why do you want to get a public sector job? Well, it's really predictable. There's a lot of security in that. Well, this is a slide from many countries in the world where public sector is under tremendous pressure from their employer to be more efficient, restructuring, downsizing. And this is globally. This is not just in North America, across the globe. So again, another reason it's important. Another reason this is important is really this, between China and India. Between China and India, this year alone, there's going to be 15 million university graduates graduating. And again, that's changing the economic landscape. It's changing the amount of competition. It's changing where employers are considering growing their teams. Now you're seeing Fortune 100 global companies look at their workforce on a global basis and will hire and develop and grow in places that are more cost efficient. You're seeing this example at IBM, where IBM has laid off a tremendous amount of people in the Americas and in Europe, and is hiring a lot more people in the emerged countries, such as China and India and the Philippines. Again, it's complete change. This is another reason why you want to be considering having global experience, because again, if you can have global experience, again, that's another tremendous benefit that you can have. Another shift in the world of work is the use of temporary labor. In fact, if you look at the fastest growing part of our economy currently in North America is the use of the temporary contractor. The numbers, the second largest employer in North America is manpower. So again, organizations using much more temporary labor, moving in and out. And again, this is another reason why you want to be in the right career, because there's less chance of that happening, or if it is happening, you'll have much more control. So again, the shift from these long-term relationships to what I call the entertainment model of just-in-time contract. Again, a shift. Another shift in our economy and the way that things begun and reset is growth, where areas are growing. So you're seeing new emerging areas growing and other areas shifting out, such as green energy, growth areas, and shifting and changing the landscape very, very quickly, much quicker than before. Another shift in reset is what I call the technology and the 24/7 nature of our economy. Again, a shift where there's an app for that. What used to be a person, there's an app for. I can think in our company where in finance, we've been able to streamline our team, and instead of hiring another person on finance, we've been able to use technology to integrate all of our financial systems instead of having another person on our bookkeeping team, example. But it's also creating tremendous opportunities. This whole concept of social media, the 24 by nature of our economy. So again, those are shifts and changes. Another change is demographics. And this is really interesting. This gentleman here, a picture of the gentleman below the Air Canada is Vivian George, and he's a pilot with Air Canada. And, it's interesting. I just happened to meet somebody at coffee today. Her husband used to work for Air Canada. Retire at the age of 60. Well, now you're looking at more people are living longer with better health, and that whole concept of retirement is shifting. So you've been hearing about this demographic shift. When the baby boomers retire, it's going to create tremendous opportunity, and that's simply not the case, because one, baby boomers are living longer, two, they're wanting to work. And this survey this is from an Ipsos survey just recently in the winter, just this winter, and it shows that in 2009, 55% of Canadians thought they'd retire, and that had shifted to 27% in 2012. So a huge shift in thinking about retirement. The top three reasons, by the way, why people are looking to stay and work longer is, one, they enjoy their career, two, they want to stay mentally active, and three, it's economic, right, in that order. So again, that's shifting. And again, if you're on the right career, another reason why you can have tremendous opportunities to work on an ongoing basis. Another reason that this is important, being the right career, which is the pragmatic reason, is what I call the mustard principle. And this applies in the sense of competition, that when I grew up, there was 2 or 3 mustards in our fridge, and now there's hundreds of choices. So how does this relate to the right career? Because, what's one of the paradox of our time is there's so many choices. There's so many different options. There's so many different types of MBAs. There's so many different types of different career paths, and they're continually changing. The same thing with employers. Employers have tremendous different choices in how they go about choosing and growing their team. So what are the impacts of these things, of the economic reset? Well, one, you're seeing more disengagement in the workforce. 2, you're seeing a higher level of job dissatisfaction. You're seeing more people only working for money. You're seeing workplace stress grow up. You're seeing a stat here, the average person will have 10 different jobs in 3 different careers. So again, why career management? Why being in charge of your career? Why managing your career is such an important skill set to have, and an important thing to spend more time on than in the previous generation where you spent a long time working the same career. Now, a lot of our clients are in this category. They're the mid-level professionals. So about 70% of our clients are in this category, 35 to 54%. And this is a Harvard study. And again, it shows that more people are working more hours per week. Again, technology, 24/7, globalization. More people feel like they're in a dead-end job. More people are experiencing burnout. And a large percentage of people are looking for a new role in a new company. So what's interesting about this is really, as I love this little graphic here, that my fingers and your fingers, that we are very much alike, that our needs are very much alike, and being in the right career, because of the reasons above, is really important. And really what we're seeing is what I call the perfect industrial storm, where all of these things are converging at the same time and creating a tremendous amount of change and a tremendous amount of opportunity. And it's interesting, I do a lot of speaking at conferences, and I was in the fall, last fall I was in Victoria speaking at a conference, and it was just around sort of Halloween, and Nestle at that point of the year introduces what they call the scary brand of Smarties. And I thought about that. The difference between the scary brand and the Smartie brand, not that much. It's slightly different, and I think it's the same thing. Are you afraid of this, or are you going to be smart about this? And the difference is really that middle ground. And Terry Rowley, I don't know, how many of you follow or know of his work on CBC? Put up your hands over if you're familiar with his show, The Age of Persuasion. How many of you listened to him or have heard him speak or read his book? A few of you have. And he talks about this whole concept of literacy, this concept that as a consumer you need to be highly literate today about the role that marketing plays. And I think this is also my deep passion is literacy, that our clients would raise their literacy about their options, their ability to brand themselves, all these types of things. Super, super important. So what are some of the ways you can deal with this? How do you go about finding the right career? What are some principles around this? And let's shift this to application. Well, number one, I love this sign, keep calm and lead on. That there is a reality that I see sometimes with clients where they're very intense about this. And I think moving it from an incredibly intense, and because it's so important, because it has such impact, for all the reasons we just discussed, to moving from this very intense pressure scenario to what I call an intentional perspective. That's really important. Number two, it's important to think globally and drink locally, to pay attention to the global shifts and ask the question of how does this apply to my situation, to my sector, to my domain. I was in Calgary at our office there, and I was coming through the airport, and I saw this within the airport, this sign. And I'm not actually a big beer drinker, so it doesn't really speak to me, the beer side of it. But I thought the principle there of thinking globally and drinking locally is really, really important. Another important principle to think about is to pay attention to what others are saying, to listen to the economy, listen to markets, listen to what's happening in your work situation. I find many people have an opinion, just like my niece who thought her dog needed water, when in fact it wasn't interested at all. And that's another important principle, to pay attention, to listen for what the needs are. Another important principle is what I call the taxi principle. I was picking up my daughter at the so she just come back from an exchange in Europe, and I saw this British taxi, and I thought, here's an example of a guy, and I've shown this slide, by the way, in Ottawa, and many people ask, how many people have seen this taxi around town? By the way, there's only one of them, and 3/4 of the room put up their hand. Now, if I asked them, have you seen a black taxi that has this license plate in town, probably none of them would be able to answer that. But it's interesting, this concept of differentiating yourself, branding, marketing, and being smart about it, and that's an example of that. So what are some of the myths around getting the right career? Well, one, that it's a new idea. Reinvent actually is not a new idea. It's something we've been doing since the beginning of time. Another myth is there's a magic bullet. How many of you have done a Myers-Briggs or some sort of colors assessment tool? Put up your hands, those of you that have done something like that. Yeah, a number of you have done that, right? Again, there's within our industry sort of this, we've done a pretty poor job, I think, of suggesting that if you just know what color you are or what four-letter acronym it is, that will solve the question about the right career. I was talking to somebody recently, and she said, yeah, I've been taking these tests and not really getting any specific answers. Well, because, this person is far more complex than a color or an acronym. So again, in our model we use is much more sophisticated than that. Another myth around this is you should be able to figure this out by yourself. I hear this from many clients who saying, I feel really bad calling you. I really think I should be able to figure this out myself. And yet if I look around, the smartest people in the world, the people that do incredibly well, are surrounding themselves with experts, with board of directors. Another myth around this is it should be comfortable. My career should be comfortable. You have to be very careful about how much comfort you have in your lives these days, particularly professional. At times you need to be uncomfortable. You need to be in a situation where you're not comfortable. I think that's really important as a principle here. Another myth is you want to do this. I don't think always that people want to do this. Another myth is you know how to do this. My son is just taking his pilot's license, but last year took his scuba diving license. And again, I would never expect him that he should know how to scuba dive. Again, it's a lot like career management. It's very complex and dynamic. Another myth around this is you need to do something radically different, and I don't think that's always true. In fact, it's very close to you. Another myth around this is I should just go get an MBA or go back to school. I mentioned earlier that we have a number of organizations that are partners with us and schools. And I'm a big advocate for the right kind of education. But I'm also, my advice to clients when they ask about the E word is to be very careful about the choices they make. That education has never been more expensive with less predictable outcomes if you choose the wrong path. And we've seen that with clients who go back and do an MBA and who haven't thought that through, or they could have seen it as a magic bullet, and it's not. Another myth around this, I don't have time. I think you need to make time for this. Another myth around this is you can discover the answer on Google. And again, I don't think it's necessarily that kind of a question. So the question is, are you ready for change? That's really the question, as David Cameron would say. Right? So how do you deal with this change? How do you find the right career? What's the foundation? Well, actually, the foundation starts with why. And Simon Sinek, I don't know if you've seen his TED Talk or read his book. He's got a great book called Start With Why. And his real question is, why do you want to do this? And if you understand the why for change, the what and the how become more important. And often people come with the change question with how or what or where is it? And what is it? Where is it? How do I get it? When really the fundamental question is why? Why do you want change? And some of the whys that I see, by the way, are this. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes it's being in a situation that where people can grow and feel comfortable in a sense of that. Another reason is for advancement. The career advancement is another reason that's important. So the question is how do you move forward? How do you identify the right career? What is the way to go about doing that? If why is the foundation, then how? What is it? What's the power? What do you do there? And my advice is it does start with who you are. It's interesting. I'll often do a lot of media work, and often the very first question I'll get is, who's growing? Who's hiring? What part of the sector is the place to kind of build your career? And the challenge of that question is, as I said earlier, the sectors change really, really quickly. So the thing that is unchangeable is you. That you are the thing that's most predictable. The marketplace will continually shift. It's interesting. A very sad story of Corey, the actor from Glee, who just recently died. An incredibly sad story. But I just heard an interview with him, and one of the things I was impressed with how he got his position at Glee. And I won't go into complete details of it, but one of the things I was impressed with is he talked with the idea of adapting. That they were looking for a singer, and he didn't at that point wasn't a singer, so he sent them something different and got their attention. But again, it was him figuring out who he was and how he could adapt himself to the market. And I have found that most people don't know themselves as well as they think they do, or they don't know the options as well, or a combination thereof. So what is a better way of doing it? If it isn't a Myers-Briggs or a Colors, or what is an effective way to do it? Well, for many, many years, I've always been interested in brands and thinking about brands. And I thought, what does that have to do with career management? And it struck me one day, the concept of identity, that great brands have a sense of identity, and out of that clear sense of identity leads to good choices. Clarity leads to good choices. So let me walk you through the model that we use at a high level, and by the way, you can download this off our site in a more extensive way to help you think through this. So let's talk about very quickly about these 4 brands, 5 brands really, and walk you through the model, and that'll be takeaway, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So when you look at these 4 brands, when you think of Starbucks, in the question box here below, how would you describe the identity of Starbucks? When you look at Starbucks, what would be 1 or 2 words you'd use to describe the identity from your perspective? Just drop that in the question box here. Yeah, so they're pricey, yep. Global, quality, 3rd place, absolutely, okay. Right, okay, quality for sure. What about Tim Hortons? How would you describe the identity of Tim Hortons? The Tim Hortons brand. It's value, absolutely. Affordable, working man, working person, absolutely. Okay. What about Don Cherry? Now, again, if you don't watch hockey, you may not get it, but Don Cherry, how would you describe the identity of Don Cherry? Energy, yeah. Big personality, absolutely. What about Ron McLean? Charismatic, yeah. What about Ron McLean? How would you describe the identity of Ron McLean? Yeah, the sidekick, the sophisticated person, absolutely, yeah. Perfect, okay. And what about Eaton's? How would you describe the identity of Eaton's? Who would you say Eaton's is? Historic, absolutely. Now, what's interesting is what do brands have in common with us? Great brands is they know who they are clearly. They know who and where their market is specifically. They know how to market themselves confidently, consistently, and they evolve and adapt on a continual basis. Gallup did a poll, a Strength Finders poll, and they did it in 60 countries and 99 companies. 1.2 million people were in the poll. 83% of professionals did not know their strengths clearly. Only 17% had a clear sense of their strengths. Who and where you market is specifically. You know what's interesting about Tim Hortons and Starbucks is while they're in the coffee business, they're both targeting a specific market and are not trying to be everything. They're very, very focused. Again, another important principle about you. One, do you know who you are clearly? Two, do you know specifically what market is a really good fit for you? The third thing is marketing yourself confidently and consistently. You know, this is one of the things that Eaton's was built an entire brand on was the catalog. And the picture I showed you earlier was from the 1913 catalog, which, by the way, you know, 100 years ago, you could order from this amazing thing, and it would be delivered to your doorstep. You could order thousands of items to be delivered to your doorstep. That was catalog, right? And that was really Amazon. And so marketing yourself confidently, consistently, and that's what Tim Hortons does. Tim Hortons consistently markets themselves. It uses roll at the rim and constantly telling new stories and new things. And so the same thing, are you marketing yourself on a consistent basis, constantly out there telling your story in interesting and engaging ways, and then evolving and adapting? And that was one of the things that Eaton's did not do very well. It did it very well for probably 80 years. In the last 20 years of its brand, it didn't do it very, very well. So my question for you is, what is your brand? What is it that makes you uniquely distinctive? And it's interesting how within less than 5 seconds, you could clearly articulate very, very big brands, which is fantastic. That's exactly why it shows that they're doing the right things. But my question for you would be, you have to know your brand. Knowing specifically your brand is more important than knowing another brand's perspective. And that's really key. And for many people, knowing their brand or knowing that thing is a blank moment for one. So what do you do with that question if you're struggling with your brand? What is a way of figuring that out? Well, we have a tool on our site, and it's the 15-minute career test. And you can download it off of our site right on our front page. It's the 15, and this is just I'm going to be going through you a lighter version of this. And again, it's just a helpful tool to help you think through this. And really, what this is about is 5 key things to think about your brand, and to start as a foundation to understand the right career by knowing who you are. And that's really the thing, is that by knowing who you are first, when Starbucks and Tim Hortons and Don Cherry really had a clearer sense about themselves, they themselves built their brand around that, not the other way around. They didn't ask the market to determine what their brand was. They figured out what their brand was and went to the market. And so there's really 5 key things to your brand. There's talents, values, passions, lifestyle, and ecosystem. So talents, values, passions, lifestyle, and ecosystem are really key. So what does that mean? Well, when you look at your talents, what are you great at? And that leads to title. So if you want to take a minute, if you have a desktop open or if you have a piece of paper there, just take a minute to put on the left side of the paper talents, values, passions, lifestyle, and ecosystem. Just take a minute to write that down or to put it on your desktop. All right, so we'll walk you through this. So talents, what are they? Well, talents are what you're great at. There are 3 things that kind of define a talent. You're great at them, you enjoy them, and you do them well. What are you great at? I'm sure many of you have worked for somebody who did not have the talent of leadership. They weren't great at it. Often people are promoted into situations which is above their talent set. They're good at maybe sales, they're good at something, but they're not great at a specific thing. So what are you great at? And that leads to title. What are you great at? Values, what's important to you? Many people will join companies, but generally they leave people. I've seen many examples as a recruiter when I was an executive recruiter. When people were leaving, it generally was out of relationship, equally as much as it was out of opportunity. And it was because the values of the organization shifted or the values of their boss shifted. If you think of the best boss you've ever worked for, they probably had a fairly similar value set or a value set that you aspired to. So what's important to you? So out of talents, how would you score yourself out of 10 if you're currently employed in your current situation, or if you're not employed in your previous situation? Give yourself a score out of 10. Same with values. What is important to you out of 10? How would you score your fit in your current situation? Passions. What do you get angry or joy at? It's interesting, thinking about this. The running room and leave was started by a gentleman who was passionate, John Stanton, about people being in community and running, being in that scenario. And what's interesting about that is that he, because of that passion, he built this incredible brand known as the Running Room. And another gentleman, Leonard Lee from Lee Valley Tools, was a 17-year public servant who was frustrated at work but passionate about tools. And again, Lee Valley Tools is now one of the largest in its country in the category. Greenpeace, started by a Vancouver real estate lawyer who was angry about what was going on in the South Pacific and started Greenpeace. A Vancouver commercial real estate lawyer started Greenpeace, right? So, I think, again, if you're going to be in the top 20 percentile, in fact, if you look at research around this by Spencer Stewart, which is one of the largest executive search firms, and they've got a book called The 5 Patterns of Extraordinary Careers. And one of the things they looked at is those that were very successful as leaders, one of the patterns of an extraordinary leader in their career was they were both good at what they do and interested. They were 6 times more successful than their peers. It wasn't where they went to school. It wasn't what club they were part of. It wasn't whether they were part of an Ivy League school. It really didn't matter. Executives that had extraordinary careers had 2 things in common. They were talented and they were engaged or passionate. And you're 6 times more successful than their peers. You cannot do well in today's world unless you're engaged with what you do. It's too incredibly competitive to do that. Lifestyle. It's another important thing. Hours, location, travel, income. What is important for you? And again, that's important to look at. What is important to you? And ecosystem. The 5th piece is ecosystem. And what do I mean by that? I mean like the company culture, the environment, even the physical environment can be important. The role of architecture. One of our clients shared with me that when he went for the interview, one of the things when he walked in the environment, it was it's sort of government gray. It was full of cubes and gray, and he realized right away that that wasn't partly the right environment for him. That he wasn't prepared to work in that kind of environment. So ecosystem is also important. So adding those up, what does this mean? Well, this is a multi-dimensional view of the right situation. It's interesting looking at this. So again, give yourself a score out of 10 in each category. So talents, so that leads to title. Values leads to fit, and it relates to ecosystem. Passions leads to direction or focus, or what I call trajectory. And lifestyle means to the kind of lifestyle that's good for you. So looking at that, add up your scores out of 10. Just take a minute to do that in each category. And then add up the total. And if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to share the total, that would be awesome. What's your total? So I'm just curious to see. So how does this help? Well, it's helpful, number one, to evaluate your current situation, to move it from, I don't like this job, or I don't feel it's a good fit, to actually to measure it, to bring some qualitative and quantitative elements to this. And I'm a big believer in measuring things. The other thing that'd be helpful for him is one of our clients did this in Winnipeg, that he had never had an easier time. The hiring manager said to him that she had never had an easier time hiring somebody. The reason was because of his ability to really, in a very precise manner, to articulate to her what he brought to the opportunity. And again, I see this over and over again. Good jobs are extremely competitive, and everything about your situation needs to make sense to the hiring manager. And this is to me about where identity is really, really key. And being able to, not just to know it, but to be able to articulate it. And we do a lot of work with clients, not only on understanding their brand, but the way they communicate to that. And some are stronger than that with others, I get that. But again, in today's world, you need not to only know it, but you also have to be able to explain it or articulate it in a very clear and precise way, in a way that relates to the market. Really key. So using this as a scoring mechanism to evaluate opportunities, using this as a scoring mechanism to evaluate where there was a fit and why there wasn't a fit, and also looking to evaluate current opportunities that might come your way, and to be able to look at 2 or 3 of them and say, okay, what about this fit works, or what about this fit is not working, is really good. So identity, and identity is really important, as I mentioned earlier, because of this. I call this the Rob Ford principle. Putting aside whether you like Rob Ford or not, and I, whatever, Rob Ford is Rob Ford. But one of the interesting things about Rob Ford is Rob Ford won the last election in Toronto by a landslide. And why is that? Because he did exactly what we're talking about. Zimmerman, the previous person he was competing against, was a person with far more experience at a higher level than him. But nobody could really understand his brand and really understand that. So this can be a terrific tool from a marketing or campaigning perspective, but also from evaluating opportunity and different kinds of career sets. And again, looking at that. And again, this is where coaching can help that. So in a sense, thinking yourself as a product and recognizing it. So how do you move forward with this? Well, it's really the kind of a building block. And when you understand your identity, when you have a clear sense of your identity, a clear sense of that, then it's a building block to start to evaluate and start to think about how to move forward. And it's really about taking steps, baby steps, little steps on an ongoing basis. It's also about being prepared. One of our clients is Scouts Canada. And one of the things that I grew up, being a scout and a cub and a venture, now it's kind of ironic that they're one of our clients, I think, is in a tremendous organization. And one of the things that's impressive about them is that they, really talk about this concept of being prepared and being ready for opportunity and making sure that that happens. And also being prepared for things that don't work out and having, having a reality of that we're going to have scenarios that don't work out. That's a reality too. Also being, looking at things in a very opportunistic way. I was in Shoppers Drug Mart and saw the pregnancy test in the condom aisle. And again, that's an example of opportunism, right? Looking for opportunity where it exists and where you can create opportunity. Also, I think the other neat thing about being in the right career is it creates space for other things in your life. I hear from many clients when they're not in the right career, they'll talk about how tiring it is when they come home at the end of the day and they're just zonked. They don't have time for different things in their life. Often it's relationships are often funny. I was in Toronto down at the beaches, and I was down at our office and I was at the end of the day, and I went for a run along the boardwalk, and I saw this gentleman, and this is what he does for fun. It's balloons, and I happen to be a kayaker, and there was behind the picture, and you probably can't really see it, but there's a kayaker. And this is what's neat. When you're in the right career, another benefit to this is it creates space for other dimensions in your life. And I also think you have to be careful not to let work totally define you, to create space for other areas in your life. The other thing to think about is three-dimensional. And that's another important part of branding and this concept of three-dimensional. So this is where social media, just as an aside, I'll just mention this next week, next Tuesday, we're doing a webinar on three-dimensional branding. So that I won't spend a whole lot of time on that. But this concept of branding and thinking about LinkedIn and social media and Twitter and Facebook, and I call that the James Cameron principle. James Cameron understood the value and the importance of technology and how to tell your story. Also, network. I think this is another important principle is, opportunity can be everywhere. And one of my clients on our leadership side, our corporate side, was telling me that he bumped into one of his, a person he knew at Home Depot. Well, this morning, he just signed a deal with that person he bumped into in Home Depot 6 months ago and has started a whole new division around this person. Who knew, right? But connections. I think another important part is optimism. Optimism is an incredibly important characteristic that I see in leaders and in people that do well. They generally aren't looking what's wrong in the world. They're generally looking, they're not unaware of what's wrong in the world or the situation there, but they are looking for opportunity. And I call the other principle of this is not just optimism, but opportunism. You know, you're optimist, well, and pessimist and realist. While you guys are busy arguing with a glass of water, I drank it. And that's really the opportunist, right? I also think in work it's knowing when's enough and not enough, and again, defining that. And also recognizing the best things in life are analog. You know, it's funny, I was reading an article yesterday. I was looking up something and it was talking about the next big thing is community. The next big growth area is community, analog community. I thought, what do you mean the next big growth thing is analog community? That has always been the thing. We just felt for a little while that social media and LinkedIn and all these other things, which are great tools, by the way, and Facebook, were important. But the reason they're so important wasn't digital. It was because they created more analog. That's the irony of this. So that's the reality, that more and more opportunities, even with all these platforms like LinkedIn and Workopolis and all these other higher bracket and all these other tools that are out there, still at the end of the day, people hire people and move forward to that. So what do you do with this? Start with what you know. But also think another key thing I found with people who do well, people often say to me, well, how successful is your you know, what you guys do? Is it work? What if it doesn't work? And one of the things is, number one, we're the only firm in the country recommended to Queens, U of T, Ryerson, UCAD, York, and others. They recommend us exclusively to their alumni. So we do good work. But I think this sign says it all. Coming soon, maybe. That at the end of the day, you can have all the opportunity and all the capacity and all the strengths, but if you're not committed to moving forward, you're not going to get the outcome you hope for. And that's really about commitment. And by the way, on this particular property now, it's a for sale sign, right? Because that person wasn't committed. So my question for you is, what is a takeaway from today? You know, when you think about your situation and getting the right career, when you think about today, what is one takeaway that could help you move forward in your career situation? So just take a minute to think about that. What is one idea or one thing that could be helpful for you as a takeaway from our webinar today? Because again, it's great to come to the webinar, but if there's not sort of one idea, and it could be a reminder, you know, that there really is nothing new under the sun. You know, my job, again, as I said earlier, is to remind you and maybe clarify and bring some perspective to this. But for you, what might be one idea that you found helpful from today's webinar about the right career or about your situation? And just take a minute, if you wouldn't mind, to share that with me on your thing. What is one idea from today that can help you? And again, what I love about that idea is all the places you'll go. Yeah, so one person here talks about this concept of being committed. And again, I've seen this, not coming soon maybe. I've seen many, many professionals say, oh, I want to be in the right career, I want to find a new role, or I want to, but they're not really truly committed to it. Not in a way that they're going all in. You know, that's really key. Another person shares the idea of branding. Yeah, absolutely, branding is everywhere in our life. I'm not saying I always agree with it, by the way, but I think my advice around this is to leverage it. I don't care whether it's in the money business, the coffee business, car business, everything is branded. You know, when I grew up, the world wasn't as branded as it is now. It was still branded. Coca-Cola got this from a very early, it's sort of Pepsi. So did Eaton's. They understood branding early days, right? But now branding is so much more sophisticated and is in every segment of including you as a person, that you are a brand. And that's why tools like LinkedIn and Facebook and other these things are tremendously powerful platforms that are free, that if you're smart about them, including Twitter, they can be really helpful. And again, I mentioned next Tuesday, you can join our branding webinar about that. How can we help you? Well, we have a number of programs to help you with this, and our transition programs, our identity programs, our career search programs, really to help you, work with you. You know, I think the reason it works is because our reputation, our process, our people, that's personalized and flexible, and that we get results. You know, again, remember, this idea started out of a recruiting firm. It did not start out of what I call a counseling perspective. Our firm has always been in the very applied world, not in the philosophical side of the fence. Not that you shouldn't do good philosophy, but I also think philosophy really weighted in practical is, I think, what makes us good. Good way to get started with us is you can either set up a quick call with me, or you can book an initial consultation as a starting point with us and with our team. And this is a good way for us to help you. I think it can be very powerful. You know, I see this. If you look at people who do well in weight loss, anything I've noticed where people tend to do well with change, whether it's weight loss or relationships or finances or whatever it is, statistically, you're 8 times more likely to be successful with support than you are on your own. This is a great article called Change or Die, looking at people that were dealing with weight loss from a Harvard Business study. And it looked at people were 77% more successful with support than they were on their own. And this is why I so believe in the value of coaching. And we see this both on the corporate side, with leadership development, with personal development. It really, really is effective. It's not a magic bullet, but it is a tremendous way to fast track, to get some focus, to get some support, and quite frankly, to get out of your own head and out of your friends and family's perspective. You know, one of the things I've noticed is it seems like everyone is a career expert or perceived to be a career expert, but we've never imagined to be a medical expert or a legal expert. It's one of the downsides of Google, by the way, that I've read a great book about that, the world of, everyone's an expert in the world, and that was this whole argument that that's the danger of something like Google and these other tools, that people perceive themselves as experts. It's funny, I spoke at the University of Saskatchewan Medical School, and my first slide was about the danger of Google and how patients were walking in self-diagnosed and with a diagnostic plan. Now, again, it can be quite helpful because the patient is more engaged in the process, but it can also be dangerous. So, great. So, next steps, if we can help you, if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to work with you on that. As I mentioned, I'll give you my LinkedIn profile if you're not connected with me. Also, you might say, well, are you successful? Are you good at what you do? Look at my LinkedIn profile. You'll see recommendations on there, and also on our website as well. Also, we have a Facebook page, so feel free. On our website, there's a bunch of tools there, but also on our Facebook page, feel free to like our page if you connect with us that way, and to see that there, as well as on LinkedIn, as I mentioned. Feel free to connect me there, and there's a tremendous amount of resources and connections that I have that you can connect with me. I'm connected to over 5,600 people in the country or across the globe in different sectors, different companies, things like that. So this is something that we can help you with. Tremendous. Okay, so any other questions or comments as we wrap up here? A couple of questions. Where are you located? So I mentioned, what if we're located in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Kingston, Montreal, Halifax, and 3 offices in Toronto. You may not be close to that. We do a lot of work via Skype and phone. We have a tremendous amount of clients that we work with that are out of the country or out of province or not near our offices, or quite frankly are quite comfortable doing this. In fact, Athabasca is the largest MBA program in the country. We're the official career coaching company for them and with them. And one of the reasons they like our program is because they have a distance MBA program, and it's all done online, one-on-one, and so is our work. So again, you don't have to be near our offices to do this. What's our certification? So all of our coaches are certified, plus we have our own level of certification as well that we add on top of that to add a university. Because in our industry, it's not like law and medicine where there's actually a national standard. There is no national standard. So we look for a combination of education, experience, practical wisdom, and certification, and then we add our own layer of career joy certification on top of that as an extra way of doing that. What's the cost? Our programs range in cost. There's a variance of range. We have an executive version, professional version, or a foundational version. So there's different levels depending on what level you're in. So our foundational programs range anywhere between $700 and $1,900 for younger professionals or lower level professionals. Then our professional versions range anywhere between $2,600 and $9,100. and our executive versions are 7,100 to 15,000. So there's a wide range depending if you're an executive, a professional, or relatively new in your career. Yeah, also I do speaking and keynotes. Yeah, so if you are looking for that in your organization, or workshops, we're brought in by many organizations for workshops. So yeah, that's something else that we do, and do a lot of that kind of work where people bring us in. You can also sometimes use it as part of your PD or professional development if you're in the public sector or in government or in your organization where you might have professional development money, and we would use this as part of our leadership program. So identity, some of the things we're talking about today will fall under leadership development, and still one-on-one, you know, about the same cost it would take to go to a course. You could do some one-on-one stuff and get some really personalized approach to this. Again, we've done a lot of work with clients. I want to do this, I want to do it as part of my training budget, and rather than going on a course and getting a binder that they'd never look at again, they do coaching. So, and again, you've seen this over and over again where coaching is recognized as good coaching is far more effective than traditional training. Traditional, you know, doing just a training scenario. So, terrific. Okay, any other questions or comments? Question of success rate. I mentioned earlier that our partners at the Basket Queens, OCAD, and others recommend us, so they've done our due diligence on that. We measure our success rate, and we have a 94% success rate. Generally, where we see issues is where people either not committed to the process, sometimes fit. Oh, that's pretty rare because, again, in our situation, because we're not just one coach, we have a team of coaches, but you only work with one dedicated coach. So therefore, if there's not a fit with that dedicated coach, we can shift you to a different coach. So that's another benefit to our model versus others where they're a single coach working out of Starbucks or whatever. And, you know, where in our case, you're dealing with the company, you're protected that way, and you're also dealing with that fact we have a team. So again, if there isn't a fit, we can move that around. So that's the benefit of our model. It's still one-on-one and still dedicated. All right. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day. And yeah, as I mentioned to you, really the key is you know, investing in yourself and taking action, making good decisions, and taking baby steps or steps, just one step. So whatever that step is you took from today, do something with it. Don't do the coming soon maybe thing where because you'll be circling back on this question again and again and again if you don't do something with it. This question, I can guarantee you, will not go away. It'll just get bigger if you ignore it or delay it. So great. So if we can help you, reach out to our team, reach out to Brittany and our team, or visit our website, careerdrive.com. Or if you know others that are looking for help or support, you know, this is how many people find out about us is through referrals. So appreciate if you let them know about our website, careerdrive.com, or our Facebook page, or our webinars or our podcasts. They're all on there. So have a terrific day, everyone. And thanks for joining us today.